So despite not making landfall, Hurricane Beryl swept through Jamaica and devastated some of the southern parishes, causing widespread damage to crops, infrastructure, homes. We saw a lot of roofs uh, swept off, torn off of their properties. What's the extent of the damage done to businesses and to our economy at large? Here to talk about it this evening, we have Floyd Green. He's the Minister of Agriculture, Fisheries and Mining, and he is also the MP from one of the worst affected constituencies. We also have with us development economist Chris Stokes. Thank you for joining us, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Hi, Floyd. Hi, Chris. I'm hoping my battery holds up tonight because, boy,
All
it
right.
has been quite a week.
Yes.
Charging phone in the car and all this kind of stuff. So I'm with it in the thick of it with you guys. So, Floyd, the agriculture sector took a massive hit from Hurricane Beryl. Do you guys have an estimate yet of what the damage, the cost of the damage is?
Yeah, so we're I would say we're still tabulating. We had gotten some preliminary figures, but that was very, very early days. As soon as the storm cleared by Thursday, our extension officers were out in the field, and I really want to commend them. Some of them who even had damages to their own property went out on Thursdays to start collecting information on farmers. But as you can imagine, there are some areas that were inaccessible, and a number of our farming communities and our farming roads that were inaccessible. So it has been task getting all the information. Additionally, we had rains over the weekend. So, what Beryl didn't, the damage that Beryl didn't do, unfortunately, those follow-up rains did do some significant damage. So we're tabulating everything. I do expect that I will have that final figure sometime by tomorrow. It's definitely, by Thursday, when I got in the preliminary report, it was already past $1 billion. So it will be in excess of that significantly.
Easily, because I've heard that I think they said 90% of the banana crop has been destroyed.
Yeah, no, so it's wide ranging. So yeah, we had about at least 90%, definitely over 80% of our banana farmers were affected, and most of them suffered, unfortunately, complete loss. I mean, people still go out to see if they can salvage any fruit, but definitely about 90%, especially in parishes of St. Mary and Portland, because again, as you know, banana planting, they're very susceptible to high winds, and they're susceptible to 40 mile per hour winds, and we were far in excess of that. But outside of that, we've seen some other areas. Our greenhouse farmers suffered terribly from Hurricane Beryl, because Hurricane Beryl came with a lot of wind. So in Manchester, St. Elizabeth, I doubt that there are any greenhouses left standing, quite frankly. And a number of them have been damaged in Clarendon, in St. Catherine. Almost all greenhouses have suffered some damage, and very, very few, I would say less than 10% in that belt that was severely impacted, are left standing or functional. Outside of that, it did affect our vegetable lines. Again, wind and rain. It did affect our fruit trees. We saw a number of fruit trees being rooted out and displaced, and it did affect our livestock. So a number of our chicken farmers, especially our small poultry farmers, and they account for about 40% of our poultry industry. A number of them not only lost chickens, but they lost cubs. I did see a very sad situation in my own constituency where I had one farmer who his chicken house crumbled, and 1,500 layers were lost in that chicken house. So it's been right across our yam farmers in Trelawney and in Manchester, right across all our crop lines, unfortunately.
So we know that your farmers, and coincidentally, you are the MP for which part of St. Elizabeth?
So Southwest St. Elizabeth, which stretches, which is, St. Elizabeth is clearly our highest producing parish. It contributes about 14% of overall production, and of that, Southwest would lead the way. It stretches all the way from Bottom Southfield to Flaggerman, Newcomb Valley, Bacon, again, very heavy producing areas, all the way through Barbary Hall and over the bridge to Middle Quarters, part of Galley and Crawford. But outside of that, we also have some major fishing beaches like Calabash Bay, Parity, Galleon, and our fishers also suffer tremendously. So when they have storms of this nature, clearly they're unable to go to sea. Thankfully, the loss to boats are is on the lower side, but we still see about 10 to 15% of our boats that have been damaged. But where they really would have suffered, a number of our fishers, the style of fishing they use are called fish pots. They go out and they put out their fish pots and then they go back for them. But a number of those fish pots would have been lost due to Hurricane Beryl. So it's significant loss on our fisheries as well.
I want to talk about some of the efforts to help these farmers and these people, because we know that it has to be devastating to lose your livelihood. But first, let me bring in Chris. Chris, welcome. It's your first time on the show.
It is my first time, and I try not to be offended that you don't have one of your fancy backdrops for your first visit.
Yeah, I'm traveling this time. So yeah, if you ever know what all I had to go through to get on the show tonight. But tell us a little bit about your background, since it's your first time with us.
Okay, but first, I'm from St. Mary, and I went 3 high schools in Jamaica: Calabar, Cornwall, and then Monroe, which is really my spiritual high school home. I studied finance at the bachelor and MBA level, PhD in economic development policy from UWI. I advised various small island developing states on economic policy. I was in banking for 15 years at a senior level between Victoria Mutual and NCB, and I now own and operate a neobank in the Northern Caribbean, a fintech-based financial institution, in addition to my work in economics. And also, as your viewers would know, I am a 4-time Olympian as part of the Jamaica bobsleigh team, which is sort of...
Yes, your season right now. You're excited. It's pure excitement with the Olympics coming up this summer.
But that's the summer games. But I am excited. Although with Sharika's injury today, it gave me a little pause as I was driving to come on. But,
okay.
Yes.
All right. So on to your other hat as a development economist. We've heard of the hit to agriculture, and Floyd just described the hit to the fisheries sector as well. What other sectors are impacted or have been impacted by Beryl?
Okay, let me say 2 things. When you say agriculture was affected, you would make an error to leave it there, because agriculture, food and non-alcoholic beverages is the highest weighted part of our consumer price index, which went up by 0.5% in last May. The subsector of that part of that whole measurement, food and non-alcoholic beverages, has to do with the vegetables, bananas and other grown provisions, which were the ones that were heavily hit, which is where the minister left it. But the issue is, going forward from there, is that this affects inflation, and inflation will affect interest rates, and interest rates affect all of us. This is it. So you have to connect them. All right. So you can't say, some man lost the pots. By the way, those pots are very.
And then the bad thing is, interest rates were just coming back down, or expected to come back down.
Mr. Byers was setting up with the monetary the committee to start to ease it down. He started to give some indication that he would, let it down. Year over year, we're at 5.2% inflation, which is phenomenal, right within the target range. We were hopeful. By the way, that's a whole nother show,
We've been having that discussion.
Yes. Okay.
And now here we are with this hit to agriculture and hit to the largest weighted set of items in the inflation basket, in the CPI basket. And so are you expecting to see inflation going back up?
You have to. You know what? One of the ironies in life, and one of the Prime Minister talks about building back better. We really have to think about what we are going to do in our new reality. And why do I say that? The explanation given for the spike in food prices in the May figure was drought, right? And the explanation that is going to be given for July is rain and wind. So the frequency of the variation in weather patterns is going to affect how we think about setting up ourselves. Now, imagine, you talk about the folks who decided that, you know what, I don't have enough water, so let me build this facility and house my vegetables in it. And as the minister just said, those are all gone. Those are all gone. So we have to find a way forward that takes into consideration this tremendous variability in weather patterns. And this is our new reality, I have to say.
So, Minister Green, does this mean that we're going to have shortages of some of these basic food items?
I think it's too early to speak of shortages. Clearly, what we do our assessments and we look at the fall off, and then we explore if there needs to be any sort of supplemental provision, and we clearly do that to ensure that we don't have what you call quote unquote shortages. But
and by supplemental provision, do you mean importation?
We will have to explore all options, including importation. There's no other way, because it will take us some time period. So clearly, the first thing we do when we go out is to see what is salvageable. What level of crop can be saved. But the extent of the devastation is so wide, even in salvaging, there will be reductions in the supply. And that is expected. I went into a field today. They were salvaging some tomatoes. He clearly is getting out some, but it's definitely reduced numbers. He does expect he'll get another pick. But, the numbers that he's getting now would be cut in half in relation to what he would get before. So definitely in the short term, you are going to see some shortage in supply, which, again, to what Chris is speaking about, will drive up prices. And I mean, we've been working very, very hard, even despite the drought, to try and increase our production numbers, and we have been growing, and we have been seeing some increases, and our greenhouses have been providing that sort of backup in the drought period to enable us to continue to drive production. But again, now they have suffered a tremendous blow, so we will have to look to where we need to supplement. And again, we have already identified that our vegetable lines are going to take a blow. The good news is that some of these crops are 6-week crops, right? And so our first thing that we do is look to the areas that were least affected and to see if we could ramp up production in those areas. So do we have greenhouse structures that are still up and running and doing well, for example, in Trelawney, that we can utilize to quickly rebound the sector? So those are some of the things that we're looking at. And clearly we're going to craft a program of support to help our farmers in that regard. The other thing that I would say is that our farmers are very resilient. So once you provide them with the opportunity to go again, they are willing to go again.
So what type of support are you looking at for farmers?
Yeah, so as we get in the assessment, we use the assessment to kind of guide what we put out. The good news is that over the years, because we know that, Chris said it, we know that some form of weather event will come and will impact our agricultural sector, whether it be drought, or whether it be rain, or whether it be wind. So we have been putting aside some funds to be able to respond. There is a reality, though. This is very early in the season. Normally, June isn't the time that we're looking to respond to major storms. It's normally further down. And based on the extent of this, I think we will have to have a sort of discussion with the Ministry of Finance to see how we can bolster what we would normally provide, and especially so that we can have some for when other events come during the season. So I will address Parliament next week, Tuesday, and I will outline in detail our program of support. And clearly it will be tied to where we are in terms of the amount of loss. But already I've said to the RADA team that, listen, we had started, because we now have a disaster management committee and a disaster risk mitigation committee. We had said, let us procure early inputs like seeds, fertilizer. So we are looking to start some distribution this week for those farmers who are significantly impacted, while we outline a major program next week.
I'm looking forward to your presentation next week. We're definitely going to be covering that. Do farmers get insurance? Because it is a very volatile industry. It's either drought, like you said, or rain and flood.
Yeah. So, insurance has been a challenge, but when I became Minister of Agriculture in 2021, and I went around and listened to the farmers, one of the things that they really asked for is could they get some form of insurance coverage. So we had met with GK Insurance, who at sometimes in the past had looked at various insurance products, whether around coffee. Some of them had work, some of them hadn't worked. But we sat down and we worked out a parametric insurance scheme offered by GK Insurance called Weather Protect, which does provide some level of insurance for our farmers. However, the scheme that they outlined looked at agriculture and seasons. And clearly they did that to kind of minimize the risk. So you're not protected for the entire year. They looked at the seasons that were kind of most volatile and the season that you would need the most protection based on your planting cycle, and people could go out and get insurance, and that is still on offer. Unfortunately, again, and it's a discussion that I've already reached out to them for us to have, with the change in weather patterns, the season is changing. So normally you may not require protection in June, right? But now you do, and you require protection not just from drought, but you require protection from rain events, from wind events. So I have met with another brokerage as part of our 25 by 25 push by CARICOM to see if we can have a year-round parametric scheme that can help our farmers. So that is work in progress, but there is option, a product on the market that farmers can access now. And some farmers did access it last year. Some farmers did get some reprieve when they were, we incentivized them accessing it. So we paid for them to start the process. And some farmers did get reprieve in November when we had that weather event.
Well, that's good news. That's good to hear. Chris, speaking of insurance, what are your thoughts on Jamaica not being able to access that catastrophe bond because the storm technically didn't make landfall?
Okay, so we weren't able to access it. Or under Beryl, we don't have the option of accessing it because of an air pressure condition in the agreement, right? Now, whether or not we would have wanted to access it is another thing. And why do I say that? The protection that Minister Clark has put in place is layered. So it starts with your own funds, your own two buckets of funds that we have put aside, which is like self-insuring. Then there is insurance. Then there is funds that are available from the IMF. And then there is sort of the stop all in the worst case condition of this, the catastrophic insurance. No, it's not something that we didn't get to access it because a case could be made that this is not the time to access it. And it doesn't matter if it comes at a cost. All right, so you almost want to reserve it for the worst case scenario on the thinking that the other things on the higher layers will get you through until and unless you need something of that magnitude. So, I hear people saying, well, it's a failure in design or so, and I think it's to purpose. I don't know the details of the instrument, but I would expect that it would be something, if we're going to go for that kind of money, 150 million US, I believe, it would have to be something that that's a bad hit after completely exhausting our other resources. Floyd said something else that is very important. It's still July. It's still July. God forbid we may have two more. We may have no more. But you part
knock
of
on wood for that one. God forbid, indeed. Knock on wood.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think the structure and the thinking behind the how we plan for these events is good. Now, is it enough? Should the conditions be different? You can always debate that, but the intention and the actual implementation of a layered structure to protect us against these adverse events is a good thing that can be improved. But we ought to be happy as a country, and Jamaican people like to beat upon ourselves. But this is a good thing that we have.
Based on what's been described so far, it seems like we're covered based on all the other instruments that you mentioned. But we'll know for sure once all the estimates are out. I heard Minister Tufton from Health saying $1 billion damage to hospitals and health facilities. Minister Green here says by tomorrow he'll have his estimate, and then there are other areas as well. So we don't have the full estimate yet. We don't know yet how much money we're going to need. And we're hoping, I think it seems likely, Minister Green, I don't know if you would agree with this, that the existing facilities, bond aside, will cover the damages that we have so far?
So let's put it this way. The good news is that we have been managing the economy in such a way that I think we can look within. And the additional funds and the additional coverages that have been put in by Minister Clark and the team at Finance, goes a far way in ensuring that we are able to respond, and we're able to respond in good time. So, I think Sir Stokes dealt with it perfectly. It is a layered approach, and it is a strategic approach that at each layer, it does speak to the sort of extent of the event, right? So clearly at this layer, we're definitely in the billions of dollars. It will definitely mean maybe some moving around. But I think at the end of the day, we will be able to respond, and we will be able to respond effectively to lead the recovery effort in the shortest possible time.
All right. Thank you so much, Minister Green. Thank you, Chris Stokes. We appreciate your presence, and we look forward, Minister, to your presentation in Parliament next week.
No problem. Anytime. Good to see you, Chris.
Take care now. All right, now. Bye-bye.